If I had to describe Shanks, my immediate response would be the strongest character in One Piece. He has all 3 types of Haki to the advanced level, his own special version of Haki, probably one of the greatest swords in the verse, Conqueror's Haki that was compared to Joy Boy, a bunch of hype statements from many credible people, aura, and leads one of the top crews in the world. However, there's an asterisk to all of this. Because what if I told you Shanks isn't the strongest? As a matter of fact, he can't be.
What the fuck?
No, it is not just due to other people, but a part of his nature that was ingrained into him over the course of his life. To explain, I have to speak about the person before we discuss the power level. Around 40 years ago, Shanks, or Saint Shanks, was born to the Figureland family in Marijois. The father was Garling, a commander of the Holy Knights, with his twin brother Shamrock holding the same position today. As you can see, Shanks' destiny would have been very simple if not for one incident. See, a year later, he ended up stuffed inside of a chest, which came into the possession of the Roger Pirates, who decided to raise him. Like, okay, could have dropped him at an orphanage, but it's One Piece, whatever. Obviously, Shanks became a completely different person than who he was meant to be. Instead of living lavish, being waited on hand and foot, he was a pirate having to fight life or death battles with his fellow orphan, Buggy. Yet unlike Buggy, Shanks wasn't just any pirate. He was more compassionate, seeming to care about freedom over things like wealth or strength. It's most likely due to this that Roger endowed him with the straw hat. Back then, we just saw it as a sign of great trust, but now we know how important it is. Roger saw his own qualities/values in Shanks, expecting him to carry out the dreams of everyone who wore the hat before. Notice how I said carry out instead of carry on, and I know some of y'all will bring up a certain son, but let me explain how Roger was wrong. After returning from Laugh Tale, we get the mysterious scene of Shanks crying in Roger's jacket. Quote, Red Taro came to him and asked him a question, only to shed tears afterwards. This is the second time Shanks' destiny was completely changed. Before, the crew had thought of him becoming the next Pirate King, taking on Roger's legacy, conquering the seas. However, upon returning from Laugh Tale, learning the whole truth, Roger told Shanks, "You're not him, Lobro," and the child couldn't do anything but collapse into tears. Regardless if he was a celestial dragon, fate didn't will it to be, or both, Roger knew Shanks was not that guy. As he was told by the Sea Kings and probably the One Piece itself, Luffy wasn't born yet. That's that. Yet, it is interesting Shanks asked Roger the question first, possibly inquiring about his lineage. That idea doesn't matter though. The point is, we know what Roger told Shanks. Pretty much his entire life's dream he's been raised on was shattered in one moment. We can see it through Buggy's flashback. Buggy expects Shanks to drop everything and find the One Piece, but Red Hair completely changes his trajectory. Now, keen viewers may say Roger planned for Ace to be the successor, as he literally said it. However, even keener viewers will notice he only ever said this after the conversation with Shanks. Yet still, Roger was sick. He knew he would never get to see Ace/whoever his successor was. Which is why in a roundabout way, Shanks is still a child of destiny. Those who went to Laugh Tale understood whoever was next up needed to bring the dawn. So with that, as well as the understanding of inherited will, they leave the prophecy in Shanks' hands, the youngest crew member who embodies their ideals the most. The figure who is freed from destiny twice so far, which could be the potential third reason as to why Shanks cried. It was never about Shanks being him, but as the penultimate holder of the Straw Hat, he has the most important mission, explaining his weird behavior throughout the series. For most of his time as a pirate, he built his strength/reputation of being a peacekeeper. This was in order to protect Luffy, but also foster an environment where he could grow on his own. Then when he reached his full potential, Shanks knew the task was finished, which is why he is just now striving for the One Piece. Finally, we can understand the main idea of this video. Shanks cannot be the strongest because that isn't even his goal. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's impossible. This is a world where strength is rooted in selfishness, yet Red Hair represents the exact opposite ideology. The perfect showing of this is when he sacrifices his dominant arm solely to inspire Luffy, which also could have cut his connection to Emu, but that's different. His power does not stem from a yearning for it, rather the desire to protect his friends as well as Luffy's path, which he only needs to be as strong as the other emperors to do. I know some may bring up Whitebeard and how he also keeps the peace, but let's put an asterisk on that because Shanks is even more conservative than him. The Blackbeard conversation conversation shows us as much, where Whitebeard blows off Redhair's request, assaulting him due to pride. Meanwhile, Shanks has never once raised his sword for anything but defense. A comparison you can make for all the other Yonko, including Luffy. The only example of him being confrontational is Mihawk, I guess, but it's very clear those were controlled 1v1s where both parties agreed to fight. So as you can see, Shanks' goals and ideology bars him from being at the pinnacle of strength. He's a man on a mission who also just wants to live a life of freedom, and the best way to achieve such is to help Luffy liberate the world. However, that does not mean he isn't extremely powerful. While he hasn't shown much, there are many lines of scaling for Shanks. Though before we speak on the captain, I first want to talk about the crew to give a sense of scale. The Red Hair Pirates are most likely the second greatest Yonko crew in the series. They can't be first because Whitebeard's is stated to be the strongest pre-time skip, and you can't really prove they grew after that. But second place is still insane. The Blackbeard Pirates still have growing to do, the Straw Hats are proving to be a disappointment, Big Mom and Cross Guild were always the weakest. The only group that could really compare is the Beast Pirates. However, Brand New stated that Shanks' team has the best balance of any pirate crew. There are no soft targets, something he didn't state for the other Yonko. From what we've seen of the Red Hair Pirates, it couldn't be any more true. The Vice Captain, Ben Beckman, is threatening admirals. I think many people undercut how impressive this is by just saying, Kizaru moved anyway, looking at it from such a linear angle. First of all, Ben also wasn't pressed off this, it was really a casual encounter for him. Second, Zoro is already the strongest character that isn't a top tier, so you can imagine what a more experienced vice captain can do. And third, there are multiple statements from external material stating the admirals fear his strength. Even if you think he can't beat one, Beckman is for sure tier with them, which would put him among the likes of Big Mom / Gear 4 Luffy. The evidence of him being in the next tier up with his captain is still very solid though, as it is specifically stated Kizaru fears him. Kizaru is far greater than the other two admirals as well as faster than Gear 5 Luffy. Luffy's in the same tier as Kaido, who stands shoulder to shoulder with Shanks. Combine all said with Beckman being stated to have equal presence to his captain, which doesn't necessarily refer to strength, yet could considering the other context. Again, Ben may be a lot weaker with the new admirals and Big Mom, but it is still extremely impressive. To reiterate, this is the vice captain of a crew that is said to be the most balanced, meaning they could all be somewhat relative to each other. Yasop is potentially the greatest sniper in the world and could have the best observation haki. Lucky Roo is based on a character whose speed defies logic and is a parallel to Sanji, so it's not crazy to say his quickness could be on the same level as Beckman's. Then we have the allies of the Red Hair Pirates, who are notoriously weak. But let me show you how that supports everything I've been saying so far. See, this would mean the allies are weaker than Whitebeard's allies, who got torn up by pacifistas. Essentially, the bulk of the Red Hair Pirates force are pre-time skip fodder, people who get one-shot by any person after Fishman Island. Add on the fact that Shanks does not possess any powerful territories like Wano. Yes, Elbaf likes him, but they are not under his flag, same thing with the giant pirates. So basically, one of the 4 pirate empires is 10 dudes and a monkey patrolling the seas. That's it. Compare this to the Beast Pirates, who have a combatant equal to Shanks, 10 top commanders, 500 fruit users, 30,000 normal troops, plus Wano, or the Whitebeard Pirates, who had the literal strongest man in the world, 5 top commanders, one of which is borderline admiral tier, 1,600 members, and 40 affiliate crews. Again, 10 dudes versus thousands of people commanded by figures who should be their equal. So it is not wild to think some members of the Red Hair Pirates are reaching that admiral tier. If they weren't, then it wouldn't make any sense. Also, while I'm here, let me clear these up. Film Red is not canon. They put fake powers in the movie in order to not spoil the story. And despite what I said earlier, Lucky Roo is not the fastest character in One Piece. There's nothing that states such, and it's just a big game of telephone. Now that's it for the subordinates, multiple of which could be reaching top tier status. It makes sense if we consider what Shanks stands for. He wants to protect his allies, so he rolls with a small group that is strong enough to face any challenge, rather than a large army only causing more casualties. So let's spin back to the mastermind of all this, the captain. Now, the easy way to do this is to say Shanks, Kaido, and Whitebeard are stated to stand shoulder to shoulder, which is supported by the latter two. Video over. Real shit though, even if you think that's false or Kaido would beat him up, there are still multiple ways to get him to the top levels. First off, the Rayleigh scaling. In Mihawk's Vivre card, it states he joined the Warlords after he couldn't find any more tough opponents. This implies Shanks being the last worthy challenger, as well as them being the strongest swordsman in the world at the time, more powerful than a 60-year-old Rayleigh. Then there are characters like Big Mom and Sengoku who show us 60 could still be a prime age. It isn't until 70 you get the narrative of people declining in strength. And Rayleigh believed he could have beaten Blackbeard in his prime. Those are all heavy assumptions, but considering Shanks/Mihawk's standing in the One Piece world, it's not too far-fetched. Especially with the implication of the captain creating a new hockey ability specifically to counter Mihawk, observation killing. We've never seen it, but it's there. On top of that, we know Shanks could be the only one of the Roger Pirates with the talent to imitate Divine Departure, so standing beyond Prime Rayleigh is not some crazy idea. Red Hair would then lose an arm, yet that is not to say he is weaker than he was 12 years ago, because he would go on to rise to Emperor status 6 years later. This was possibly achieved by defeating Loki, though considering how Luffy and Blackbeard rose to be emperors, it could have just been a Wano situation, so I'm not going to speak on that. The only real loss sustained is that his potential strength could never reach Mihawk's again. Though if your only flaw is that you can't beat possibly the strongest person on the planet, that is saying something. Afterwards, we can talk about the Admiral scaling. In Marineford, Shanks blocked a Kainu, which some consider to be a perception blitz considering the angle. However, it is easily defended by saying the Admiral was aiming for Kobe, not using his full strength or speed. Plus, it's not like he was scared of Red Hair, and contrary to popular belief, Sakazuki is greater now, so this no longer applies to him. Though you cannot say the same thing for Green Bull. At the end of Wano, we got to see the infamous Wi-Fi hockey feat, and yeah, Green Bull was not pressed at all by the forces of Wano, until Shanks shoots Conqueror's hockey all the way up the falls, pinpoint targeting the Admiral. A feat not only for Conquerors, but observation as well. The defense for this one is that Green Bull doesn't want to face the entire Red Hair Pirates, and that's fair. Though he is still knocked out of his Logia form screaming, then before he realizes what it is, he asks who it's coming from, meaning Shanks' raw aura alone was enough to make an Admiral question his life decisions, not even knowing he was there. Finally, the most recent instance with the Kid scaling. The first thing Kid does upon reaching the land of the giants is making the worst mistake of his life, threatening Shanks' friends. He is just someone who wants to live a free, peaceful life. So while his demeanor may not seem like it, Shanks will be ruthless when that is threatened. Within the span of 10 seconds, he uses Future Sight, blitzes from the shore of Elbaf to the enemy ship, one-tapping both Kid and Killer. It's crazy people try to downplay this by saying the explosion of the railgun was also a factor, but is it? First off, many assume the explosion is equal to the power of Damned Punk itself when there's no evidence of that. Second, Shanks was also caught in the blast, yet he sustained no injury, showing the explosion did not play a large effect, if any at all. Again, this was both Kid and Killer. Killer being on par with the other rooftop fighters, those same fighters Big Mom struggled to put down. Now you see what I'm getting at here. Red-haired Shanks, no diffed, 2 characters, another Yonko, lost to. I know there's a lot more context than that, but even when adding it, you'll come to a similar conclusion. It doesn't matter. Yes, it can be argued Kid was off guard, though considering everything I mentioned up to this point, it's moot. The speed difference between Shanks and Kid is so vast, it would be the same outcome regardless. With a resume as such, what more is there to say? I could bring up like hockey equal to Joy Boy, yet honestly that doesn't mean anything to me because the old generation characters could just be closer in power to the new gen. But yeah, it's hard to make a video on something we already know so well. Shanks is the most goated character in One Piece. As the second to last holder of the Straw Hat, it only makes sense. He has the most important mission, one he gives the utmost amount of sacrifice to. This means he can't be the strongest, but damn is he close. Instead, Shanks uses this power to defend his friends, as well as pave the way for Luffy to become Pirate King. It all stems back to his personal beliefs. Even after the words from Roger, learning of his heritage, becoming an emperor, Red Hair still maintains the same personality, just a chill guy who strives for freedom. As the Vivre card states, if we define the Pirate King as the freest person on the sea, then Shanks is undoubtedly the closest to that throne, and I couldn't agree more. So some may bring up the fact that I didn't mention any metas for Shanks actually being the strongest character. And that's because there is none. The reason people think Shanks is top 1 or whatever is because of hype, aura, and bias. People say, oh, Oda gives him all these cool moments though, without acknowledging the fact that he wrote in 2 characters that are directly stated to be stronger than Shanks. Then, contrary to popular belief, Shanks has not done anything that you can't say other people upscale from. Conqueror's Haki equal to Joy Boy? Okay, Mihawk is stronger than that. Kaido considered him a threat. Alright, Whitebeard is stronger than that too. It is very clear that those 2 titles cannot be contradicted, which is why most discussion of Shanks has to fall back to non-arguments, like what if he's not a swordsman? What if he uses a gun? What if Haki Beam? All of which get less and less effective as the series goes on, but whatever, I'm just lucky to watch it happen.